Good morning, everyone. My name is Dan Leary, and I'm the Director of Innovation Park at Penn State, which is Penn State's 118-acre research park. And it's great to have everyone back today. So I worked several years in the private sector prior to coming to Penn State, and I've spent the past 3 decades in several roles assisting in startup and emerging technology-based companies in the state of Pennsylvania, and sometimes beyond. So on behalf of Invent Penn State, welcome to our second day of the Venture and IP Conference. We're happy you could join us again, and hopefully you learned some things yesterday and met some good people. When we think about this event, it's all about happy collisions. And we're trying to jam together some talent, capital, and opportunity and try to get some deals put together and some investments made. So get to know some people and create a few new relationships today as you go through the event. As you refresh your coffee or take a second dip in your home office donut box, which I think some of you have located your home offices right next to your refrigerator. It's happened to me. I want to run a few visuals of Innovation Park to let you get a flavor of some of the people and the place and the space we have at the park. And at the same time, I want to share an experience I hope captures the soul of why we're gathering together today at the conference. Over time, I've had the privilege of working with hundreds of individuals to start and grow, sometimes kill, or turn around young companies. And I've met with many different entrepreneurs. One of them, by the name of Alfonso, is a person that I want to take a few seconds and share a few thoughts about him. And I hope it will inspire your efforts today and even beyond today. This gentleman graduated in 1954 from Lyndhurst High School in New Jersey and earned a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Columbia College, a master's degree in biochemistry from Loyola University, and a doctorate in physical chemistry from Stevens Institute of Technology. He began his career in 1967 as a professor of biochemistry and immunology at the Jefferson Medical College, where he established a large award-winning research program. He directed postdoctoral studies in immunology and was known for making complex issues comprehensible to his students, which I think that's actually the definition of a good teacher. Alfonso also worked at the National Institute of Medical Research in London and over time as a consultant to a few biotech companies in the Philly area. He founded 3 companies associated with innovation and magnetic technology, and he holds 64 US patents. In 1983, he founded Immunicon Corp, which was acquired in 2008 by Johnson & Johnson. There he developed, among other things, high gradient magnetic devices and cell separation technologies. In 2009, his work on Cell Search, which is an FDA-approved system for isolating and analyzing tumor cells from blood, was recognized by the New York-based Gallium Foundation as the country's best medical technology. In 2011, Alfonso co-founded a State College life science firm with his son and directed the development of an immunomagnetic cell selection system with applications in gene therapy. Concurrently, he founded companies that created and marketed novel clothes hangers and hanging systems, along with large-scale water remediation processes. His son often says, "Hey, the guy loves to solve problems." He even takes on household projects with gusto. He does electrical and construction projects and has been known to call himself the molecular plumber. Through his eyes, every problem has a solution, and he brings a passionate spirit of inquiry to every issue and situation. He's an energetic conversationalist who pivots from one topic to another. So when you're with him, you have to pay attention and keep up. In 1992, in an interview with the Philadelphia Inquirer, he said, "Terror was the best way to describe the life of a scientific businessman." I think that's part of running a business, he said. You learn to live with a lot of terror. Along with his scientific and entrepreneurial success, Alfonso remains ever vigilant to the risks of creating a company. A day this past January, a colleague and I had scheduled a Zoom meeting with Alfonso and his son to go over some business issues, as he was working on a very exciting strategic partnership for his state college company to move the technology into the market space. They'd been working on the relationship for almost a year. They had scheduled to sign the agreement the previous Friday, and they were going to give me an update. After 15 minutes of waiting, they didn't join the call, so I sent a text to see if he was okay and we could reschedule. An hour later, I received a message from his son. His dad had signed the deal with the strategic partner on Friday, and Monday passed away at home unexpectedly. A few days later, the first paragraph of the article in the Philadelphia Inquirer read, "Paul Alfonso Liberti, 84, a celebrated professor of biochemistry and immunology at Thomas Jefferson University's Medical College and the founder of several pioneering biomagnetic companies, died Monday, January 18th at his home." Alfonso, or Paul to those of us who knew him, was a good man. On January 18th, Paul's co-founder and biomagnetic solutions partner, his son Ted, along with his siblings and a mother, lost a very wonderful father and a husband. Innovation Park, Penn State, the scientific community, and the entrepreneurial ecosystem of this region lost a great teammate and mentor. Paul loved to share, and he really loved to teach. I share this story because it's a message of hope and inspiration. Paul was a man who worked to the bell for the advancement of science that will benefit all people. You see, at age 84, it's not about the money anymore, and it's not about the recognition. It's about the fact that you can use your talent, your knowledge, and your experience to do good for other people. Biomag Solutions has invented better ways to separate and characterize circulating tumor cells that could predict metastatic breast, prostate, and colorectal cancer outcomes, all brought to you by the molecular plumber. It's our hope that Biomag's new partner, Gamma Biosciences, is able to move the technology to the market. So for the entrepreneurs and investors today, always remember that you're standing on the shoulders of really good people who've gone on before you, and now it's your time. Yet don't ever forget that those following you deserve strong shoulders to stand on too. Use your talent and train yourself to succeed. One doesn't rise to the occasion in difficult business situations. You default to your highest level of training. Today is a beautiful process of pitch and catch. Entrepreneurs, I hope you pitch with purpose and commitment. And investors, please listen and counsel with humility and sincerity. They say a smart person learns from their mistakes. Paul taught us that a wise person learns from the mistakes of others. So in closing, I have a John Wayne quote on my office chalkboard, and it reads, "Life is hard. It's harder if you're stupid." Paul taught us many things through his actions. He was a firm believer that good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. If he were with us here today, he would encourage us to find and seek counsel from folks who recognize our human condition has failings, yet those folks remain ever hopeful about our potential to create and contribute to a greater good. So onward and upward today, get to work, meet some good people, and develop some relationships. Here's what's coming up today. We're starting at 10:40. We're going to kick off session 4, which is to deconstruct status quo, thinking to drive innovation in your company, organization, or community. Round 2 of the Venture Connection begins at 11 a.m. and runs until 1 p.m. At 1 p.m., join us for the session 5, which is IP 101, what every startup needs to know about intellectual property protection, which the first thing you should know is if you developed a new molecule, don't hire your neighbor who is a real estate attorney, because you will sign version 2 of that licensing agreement, not version 32 that person will develop. And then this afternoon, don't miss the fireside chat that we have with Ken Frazier, who the CEO of Merck, and our own Dr. Barron, the president of Penn State. And then later, we're actually going to announce the winners of the Penn State Tech Tournament before you leave. So make sure you come back and join us for that. It's always exciting to see who wins the money. Once again, thank you for attending. Whenever we can hug people again, make sure you hug your sponsors. And I want to turn this session over to Nina Ellis of Invent Penn State to get started on session 4. Nina.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webcast presented by Penn State University. I'm Nina Ellis. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications for Invent Penn State. For those of you who are new to our ecosystem and to the Invent Penn State initiative, it spans far beyond this conference. I encourage you to look into some of the resources that are available. It's a university-wide initiative that focuses on economic development, job creation, and student career success. Over the past 5 years since its inception, we've really worked to bring venture capital to this region, which is why we have this conference. We've built out 21 innovation hubs that offer accelerator programs, makerspace, rapid prototyping resources, and no-cost legal and IP advice for startups. It's open to the community, as well as to our faculty and students. And we've helped thousands of entrepreneurs and helped to start hundreds of companies in the last 5 years. I'm really excited to be a part of this panel today. During the pandemic, we quickly pivoted all of our resources and the innovation hubs to offer as many of our programs as we could online. As far as my background, I'm on the executive planning committee for this conference and also on the marketing and programming committees. I have a background in B2B and B2C brand building to help companies spur rapid growth, including I've worked with the iconic teen snowboarding and footwear brand Airwalk, helped to build out the Sheets convenience restaurant concept, and a technology-enabled personal training club called Coco Fit Club. So disruptive innovation has been at the heart not only of the Invent Penn State initiative, but also my other professional roles. I'm happy to be a part of the session, as I said. So thank you for joining us this morning. For me, it was a snowy Friday morning. I live on a mountain, which is in a forested area that was previously the home of the Muncie Native American tribe, and we had snow. I'd like to thank our esteemed sponsors at this time. I believe they were mentioned earlier, but we could not put on this conference without them. And we are so grateful that even during a pandemic, they supported this crucial resource to startups in the region. I'd now like to thank our panelists who've joined us today, and would like to introduce them to you. Sultan Meiji, who's the Chief Innovation Officer of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Tina Richardson, who is the Chancellor of Penn State Lehigh Valley and also helped to launch the Lehigh Valley Launchbox in their community. And Kara Wasser, who's founder and CEO of Ohana Link Technologies. You'll learn more about the panelists in a few moments. And now I'd like to introduce my co-moderator, Brian Slaywin. He's the Director and Portfolio Manager of Ben Franklin Technology Partners. And when he asked for his professional photo for this conference and session and for the guide, he jokingly sent a movie photo of John Belushi in a toga. And I swear they could be twins. I thought it was him in a costume. But Brian is a consummate moderator. and he often makes me laugh. So Brian, thank you for agreeing to enlighten and maybe even entertain us today. No pressure. Everyone, please welcome Brian Slaywin.
Well, Nina, thank you very much. My mother is very proud of that photo, and I appreciate you sharing it with everyone. And Dan, thank you for a wonderful story about Paul. I was privileged to meet him a few times, and certainly your story put us all in the right mindset. So why are we here today? First, we want to get our hands around what status quo thinking is and the challenges that it'll represent for your companies. Then, not only how, but why successful companies and organizations actively work to dismantle their embedded status quo thinking. And then throughout today's presentation, we'll be turning to our panel to see real world examples of what's needed to build innovation into your business, your organization, and your community. And my favorite quote from one of my favorite people, "You've got to risk it to get the biscuit," from Jimmy Fallon. So normally this presentation is done before a live audience. So as you can imagine, the past year has been a bit of a challenge. So I'm going to ask everyone to do this on their own. What I'm going to do is start the first part of a sentence, and then I will ask you to complete the second part of the sentence. And of course, our panelists are welcome to open their microphones and complete the sentences with me. So here's an example of the first sentence. We've always, and of course your response would be, done it that way. That's a good example of status quo thinking. If we keep doing what we've done, we'll keep getting what we've gotten. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Someone wholly invested in the status quo is unlikely to disrupt it. The status quo shouldn't be a position. The status quo should only be a reference point. And finally, the status quo is made to be broken. All too often on the long road up, young leaders become servants of what is rather than shapers of what might be. Innovation requires them to challenge the status quo. And so that with that as a platform, it's a real honor to introduce our panelists to you today. You've already met my co-moderator and partner, Nina Ellis, who's the Director of Marketing for Invent Penn State. And as Nina mentioned, I am a portfolio manager for the Ben Franklin Technology Partners of Central and Northern Pennsylvania. As we were putting this program together, we searched our vast network throughout the Penn State network, and we found the ideal first panelist. Dr. Tina Richardson is the Chancellor of Penn State at Lehigh Valley, and Dr. Richardson has an extensive background that I'd like her to open her microphone and share now for a couple of minutes about not only being a chancellor, but the opportunities that status quo and dismantling status quo have presented in her career and at Lehigh Valley. Dr. Richardson?
Thank you so much, Brian. I am delighted to be here today and to be a part of an outstanding discussion with even more impressive colleagues. I have been in higher ed for over 30 years now, and I early in life received my training as a counseling psychologist and then went on to become a faculty member. But what led to me using an innovative approach and challenging status quo thinking had to do with a lot of leadership opportunities where I had the chance to meet leaders who were innovative thinkers, innovative leaders in higher ed. I also had the opportunity to do fellowships as a result of the Fulbright program and then the American Council of Education. What I saw was that education could be used as a resource to transform and to change the realities for individuals and for communities. And so I developed over the course of my career a collective impact approach that I brought with me to Penn State Lehigh Valley in 2015. And I implement today, not only in how I lead the education process as chancellor and CEO of the campus, but how I provide oversight for our Lehigh Valley Innovation Hub. So
Great.
it's a pleasure to be here.
Dr. Richardson, thank you very much. I appreciate your willingness to contribute to today's discussion. At Ben Franklin, we're privileged to work with and meet some of the most innovative entrepreneurs literally in the country. 4 years ago, we were privileged to meet Kara Wasser, who had this crazy idea. And she worked on it and continued to work on it and is still working on it and is now growing a very successful company out of Mercer County in Hermitage. And so it's a real pleasure to introduce to you Kara Wasser, the founder and CEO of Ohana Link Technologies. Kara?
Thanks, Brian. Yes, I am one of the crazy ones. My name's Kara Wasser. I'm the founder and CEO of Ohana Link Technologies. Prior to this, I was the definition of living the servant life in the status quo. I was a banking professional, established career, nice pension, 401k, the bells and whistles that I was raised to strive for. And my dad still reminds me that I can always go back. Status quo thinking, right? Luckily, over the years, I continued on a path of learning and challenging myself and continuing to grow through personal development. My entrepreneurial spirit was seeking challenge and change and fulfillment that the banking career didn't offer me. Although I had no idea that it would lead me to where I am today. As entrepreneurs, we're willing to risk and break away from the mediocrity and move towards the next level of greatness, even if it seems impossible at first, or even still does at times. It took me years to accept the title of being a tech entrepreneur. Brian can vouch for that. If he had $1 for every time I told him I'm a banker and a mom, he'd be on an island soaking up some sun right now and not sitting here. After experiencing one too many health-related events and realizing the challenges that patients and families faced in not having a good solution to support a patient and for a patient to feel supported, I set out on a mission to create a solution for that problem. I realized the focus in healthcare communication was being put into telehealth and connecting patients to physicians, but families and support systems were left to figure it out. So one day in January 2019, I decided to risk it all. I ditched my full-time career, cashed in my 401k and pension, and decided I was going to build a business. So I began building a mobile app that would later become Ohana Link. I started with Ohana Link Baby, which connects expectant parents with their loved ones, enabling them to share their pregnancy journey through delivery. I missed the birth of my niece due to bad communication, was added to group text messages, didn't know who I was talking to because I didn't have numbers saved, and realized that this problem was way bigger than just in this space. So getting ready to launch Baby in January 2020, we began raising capital during a pandemic. That was fun. And then we started, planning the next phases for the business. We built an incredible team during a pandemic. We hired 12 people. And we used the foundation of Baby to quickly respond to the pandemic with Ohana Link Health and Ohana Link Health Kids, which are mobile waiting rooms that connect families during health scenarios from shorter term illnesses, emergencies, surgeries, et cetera. And we've continued to explore areas of growth in healthcare space, including social services, domestic violence, and any scenario in which someone needs supported and the friction can be removed from supporting that person. So innovation, means the progress forward. And what I didn't expect to find is how being innovative and breaking out of that status quo creates change and translates to our communities, job creation, connection, support, showing our youth that they can build a tech company in Western Pennsylvania, and then bringing generations of families together through technology. And so I'll stop there, be happy to answer any questions following the presentation. So.
Great, Kara, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thanks, Brian.
Our third panelist today is someone that I've known for quite some time. We're both St. Louisans at heart. Sultan Meiji, who is the first Chief Innovation Officer for the FDIC. And Sultan, it's an honor for you to be here. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us and your journey throughout your innovation career.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. It's great to be here amongst Dr. Richardson and Kara. Like so many innovators, we come from very different backgrounds, very different journeys. I think Kara's got an amazing journey, and so does Dr. Richardson. My journey starts off about 30 years ago, sadly. I'm that old at this point, and was there at the kind of the plumbing stage of the internet. Worked on core technologies, protocols, HTTP, XML, things like that. While I was an artificial intelligence researcher, went corporate, worked on the public markets, did a couple of tech leadership roles in larger companies. And then for the last, kind of phase 3, the last 12 or 13 years, I've been teaching. I've been building and scaling a series of startups in fintech and biotech, mostly with a focus on fundamentally altering unit economics of markets, whether it's cloud or genetic testing or banking. And then, as you see from the title here, I a few months ago joined the FDIC as their first Chief Innovation Officer with the mandate to basically modernize and bring innovation into the banking system here. There's been a tremendous amount of energy put into the fintech ecosystem, and globally, everything from cryptocurrencies to just keeping the lights on and dealing with things like the SolarWinds hack. And so it's a testament to the leadership of the agency that they created a role like this, and also would put someone like me in there. And we're doing everything from simple stuff to talking about quantum computing and everything in between. So it's a fascinating journey we're on, and bringing that innovation spirit to a federal agency for the first time is an eye-opening experience. I'll say that. But thank you so much for having me, Brian. I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, Sultan, thank you so much. And to all of our panelists, thank you. And to the audience, you have a rare opportunity to ask questions of 3 innovators who have worked their entire career to break status quo thinking in their businesses and their communities, and in some cases, the entire globe. So please do take advantage of the opportunity. If you click the Q&A or the chat button at the bottom of your screen, you can certainly ask questions. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can also put questions in the YouTube thread, and we'll have someone who will surface those questions in just a little bit. So let's talk about what status quo thinking is not. And here's a real world example. Many of you remember in the early 2000s that Blockbuster Video was it. Streaming video hadn't happened yet. The internet was just sort of knocking on the door, but there were literally Blockbuster Video stores everywhere. And you'll see in January of 2005, they had nearly 6,000 stores. But there was some business model problems. So first of all, if you're hanging out with your kids and your dog on the couch, the very last thing you probably want to do is get out of that situation and drive somewhere. But that's what you had to do back in the day. And of course, you probably had to stand in line if something really popular was out. Of course, in this line, they likely could give you bottles of water to drink, but you had to stand in a line to even get in the store. And then once you got in the store, well, you had to fight with all these people to get the one last version or the one last available video of the movie that you wanted to see. And if it was out, well, you were out of luck. And then, of course, the all-time favorite, Blockbuster called and they want their late fee. It was really unfortunate that Blockbuster had essentially cornered a market, but had done a lot of things really inefficiently. So there were 2 gentlemen who were tech entrepreneurs in the Silicon Valley, and their company was being purchased by a much larger company. But the earnout was that they still had to come to work for about 6 months. So every day they would drive from, there's a mountain or there's a hill, I guess, a very large hill in Silicon Valley that you have to drive across. And every day they would carpool and they would get together and talk about, we want to do something in tech. We want to be disruptive. We want to get into a new space. and obviously the internet was growing. So they looked at a number of challenges in this particular model. First of all, they wanted to eliminate late fees, right? That was the bane of everyone's existence. They also wanted to eliminate storage costs. Those stores were less about, moving product and much more about they needed a home for all of these videos. So they wanted to figure that out. They also wanted to go away from a purchase by purchase and increase stickiness. So they've created originally a monthly subscription. And they finally wanted to make on-demand or reasonably on-demand a reality. Reed Hastings, who was the founder of this company, said, "Don't tell your employees what to do and make them check boxes. Give them the context to dream big, the inspiration to think differently, and the space to give them the space to make mistakes along the way." Context, dream, and inspiration. It's the core of his company's status quo breaking thinking. So as you know, Blockbuster put up a bit of a fight, but they lost. And now we have Netflix. Now, Netflix, as you recall, used to be a mail service, but it's not anymore. They're now a completely streaming service company because of this context to dream and be inspired. And so I highly encourage all of you to watch on Hulu, on Netflix. It's all over the place. Netflix versus the world. This is a great short video. It's about an hour and a half or so long that really details the status quo breaking that status quo thinking and how Netflix was born. The next time you're challenging the status quo and you feel like you're out on a limb, remember that someone once sat in a meeting and said, "I know, let's make a movie about a tornado filled with sharks." So what happens when we challenge the status quo? Challenging the status quo is the first step to make an impact and a positive change. Well, when you challenge the status quo, things like Invent Penn State get developed. And then because of that momentum, other organizations become developed or become part of the party, right? Like the Penn State Launchbox in Lehigh Valley, or in Northwest Pennsylvania, the Innovation Beehive. And of course, Ben Franklin is all about innovation and investing in it. And out of that comes all of the amazing companies that you will either meet or have met today or during the Venture and IP conference. Here are just some of the logos. This is not all inclusive, but every single one of these companies and all of their founders have done the critical piece, which is there used to be a way that we did it, and we think we've got a better way. And so we're really proud. Ben Franklin is very proud, and of course, all of Invent Penn State is proud to be involved with all of these organizations pushing forward on innovation. So what do we need to challenge the status quo? There's nothing more fundamentally disruptive to the status quo than a new reality. And I think in the past year, we've all seen a new reality, and the opportunity to challenge the status quo, be innovative, and do new things is here like almost never before. So of course we need talent. And what talent do we need? We need co-founders, we need operators, we need salespeople, we need cyber warriors, we need innovators, we need mentors, and we need entrepreneurs like Kara, unlike Sultan, who took a chance to do something bigger than they were going to be able to do otherwise. Well, who are they? Well, they're basically everybody, right? Especially internationals and refugees. We're seeing a great entrepreneurial surge in women, in minorities, in boomers, Gen X and Ys and Zs. They're basically anybody who's given enough resources and enough opportunity to challenge the status quo. And where are they? Well, we're either going to grow our own, we're going to keep what we've got, or we're going to attract, reattract, and import them. And frankly, we should be doing all three. And I think at the core of Invent Penn State is that grow our own, keep what we've got, and attract. What else do we need? We need capital. We need non-dilutive capital. We need high net worth individuals to start angel groups. We need venture capital. We need private equity. Certainly many of you have heard of the silver tsunami. As the last generation of owners are now aging out, what comes next? Will they shut down those companies, or will young entrepreneurs come in and reinvent those companies to scale to even greater heights? Obviously, that's the hope. So where is that money? Well, it's everywhere. Certainly plenty of money has been coming out of the federal government. We see states like Pennsylvania who have funded Ben Franklin Technology Partners and others. Money is available in communities, it's available in foundations, it's available in associations. You just have to have the right project to put that money into. And who qualifies? Of course, really almost anyone. Startups with IP or lifestyle business with assets, accelerating companies in tech, service, and manufacturing. All of those companies are moving forward on innovation. And then, of course, mentorship, critically important. What we need are accelerators like you have at Alpha Lab and Gear in Pittsburgh, the Ben Franklin Tech Accelerator Program, the Idea Test Lab at the Launchbox, Candy Factory in Lancaster, incubators, and more. And who are they? Well, frankly, it's all of us. It's really a collection of those willing to jump in and help the next generation of entrepreneurs. And they're everywhere, especially embedded with inside organizations and companies. There are a lot of companies in my neck of the woods in Northwest Pennsylvania that are actively searching out and supporting startups, young companies, to then build their company and create to their communities. It's leadership's responsibility to create a culture where challenging the status quo is encouraged. And so collaboration is key. What we need is to be able to and get comfortable with disrupting the comfort mindset and developing an abundance mindset. The idea behind no wrong door, it doesn't matter whose door you knock on, you will get the support that you need. Our organizations and our communities need to continue to develop that. Of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion is an absolute critical element of disrupting the challenge, the status quo. We need a commitment to the work. There's a fabulous organization called Opened Eyes that is doing some amazing work in the status quo and DEI space. And then also a recognition of who isn't in the room. It really is our responsibility collectively to make sure that people are in the room if they're not already there. So why? Because companies committed to D&I are financially, culturally, and collectively more successful. Adding women to the C-suite enhances how companies think, and it improves results, according to the Harvard Business Review. Diversity enhances creativity and unlocks innovation by encouraging the search for novel solutions. And then finally, a changing work culture, partly because of the pandemic, but also mostly because of the opportunities ahead. Building diverse, equitable, and inclusive companies makes us more innovative, diligent, and harder working. Workplace culture drives innovation and high performance, according to a study by McKinsey. Normal is what the majority does, which is why different is so interesting and innovative. And then finally, a friend of Sultan and mine out of St. Louis, the best way to avoid groupthink is to make sure there's a diverse group in the room. And of course, Jeff Bezos, a leader's job is to encourage people to be bold. And so all of these quotes and a lot of other research is available. I will share with you a link where you can download all of these documents so that you have access to this information and a lot more. So let's talk about what's next. Let's bring our panelists back into the room. And I'm hoping that we have a number of questions to start with. I think the first question I'd like to ask, and it's really open to Tina or Kara or Sultan, how do you know when you've done enough innovation? When do you stop challenging the status quo? And that is really open to anyone who wants to take that on.
So I'll start by saying that you've never done enough innovation. Innovation is the result of emerging problems, challenges, and opportunities, and those are endless. And so you've never done enough innovation. You've innovated effectively in the context of what's confronting you at that moment, but it's a non-stop process. For example, when I started getting involved with the Lehigh Valley Launchbox and listening to female students, I realized that very few of the students that I was talking to realized that there was an innovative entrepreneurial thinking aspect to what they'd chosen to study and what their passion areas were, even the hobbies that they had. And so they said, "Oh, I'm just a biology student. I'm not, I'm not an innovator. I'm not a business person. There's no business application that they could think of." And I said, "Oh, we have a problem here." What I noticed was there weren't very many women surrounding the campus who were in business, who owned businesses that were in leadership positions. So I created a network of women in business who surrounded my campus so that students, both male and female, would see women's leadership and the ways in which women had responded to challenges that were emergent for them, how they solved those things. And it impacted every student. It created that entrepreneurial mindset. We have over 1,800 women surrounding our campus to support entrepreneurship and innovation. And 1,800 isn't enough. It'll never end. We have a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Dr. Richardson. Sultan, I know you're just starting at the FDIC, but from social media, I can see all kinds of things that you're already starting to do. Can you share some of those initiatives that you've begun and where you think that will head your organization?
Absolutely. And just to tie it into answering your question, I'll take what Dr. Richardson said and riff on it a bit, which is innovation has to become part of the DNA of your organization. It's a cultural component. It's a process. One of the things that I tend to say is if you're doing the same thing you were doing 3 years ago, if you're getting the same result, if you're using the same tools, if you're, if it's basically status quo for that amount of time, then great, you should be spending less money on it. And then everyone's like, "Oh no, we can't spend less money on it." It's like, okay, great. I actually learned that from a friend of mine who used to be CTO at Ford. And he basically said, if you're doing the same thing next year, if you're going to plan on doing the same thing next year you're doing this year, I'm going to give you 5% less money to do it because at a minimum, you should be getting more efficient. And that's great. It's, you give people the opportunity of, okay, go down the efficiency path or go down the innovation path, but it should be embedded in the organization. So, I'll highlight a few things we've been doing at FDIC. So the first is we've been running a rapid phase prototyping program, which is designed to turn the acquisition of technology away from a traditional government, 3-year multi-million-dollar program just to acquire, a simple cloud service or something like that, to something much more innovative, much faster. And we basically launched the program, ran multiple phases, ran 30 vendors through it, got to our kind of short list, and then got to our final presentations from August of last year in the middle of the pandemic through to about 2 weeks ago. And so that just gives you a sense of the pace of some of the things we're able to do. We've also launched a program to create standard setting bodies across the banking ecosystem, which also started last year. And then very recently, I think it just potentially Monday. I lose track of time in my current world. We announced a strategic partnership with Duke to look at everything from artificial intelligence and quantum computing applications in the banking sector through to using zero trust, zero knowledge risk management proofs to analyze risks to the banking ecosystem and kind of everything in between. You'll see a lot more activity like that. As we go through the year, we have 4 themes of activity. And so these are important. As you think about how to frame an innovation discussion, what you want to do is give people a sense of what their true north should be, right? Because it's about overall value creation. And so ours are great. And you'll hear very similar themes to some of what's already been said here today, which is the first is around inclusivity. We want to create a diverse, equitable, and inclusive banking environment for the future. And whether or not we're talking about underbanked people, which we're attacking with our Get Banked program, or minority and women-owned small businesses or startups, there has to be more robust banking infrastructure for them. The second is around resilience. We have to create a more resilient banking infrastructure in the United States, whether it's in the face of global competitiveness from not quite liberal democracies in other parts of the world, through to protecting ourselves from bad actors with things like the SolarWinds hack. We also have to amplify our people. We are rapidly moving from a place where technology is some of the job, or it's a way of accentuating what people do, to it becoming the entire job. And we have a lot of people who spend 45 minutes of every hour manhandling technology, fighting old systems, fighting legacy technology, for example, in the banking ecosystem, and instead of actually being the experts that they are. And it doesn't value the people with their expertise, their abilities, the value they create to the organization. And then finally, we have to protect the future. My joke is, Mr. Musk will have a bank on Mars here at some point, potentially using a cryptocurrency, or maybe he'll create his own, who knows, or it'll be running on the Starlink satellites or something like that. How do we interact with that? How do we create that 2030 vision of the world such that we know what's coming, and so we can prepare for it? We can be more proactive about it instead of being reactive about it. So there's a few things that we're kind of kicking off and doing.
Excellent. Thank you, Sultan. And Kara, I know that you and your team have really been using some innovation thinking to evolve your products. You mentioned you started at Ohana Link Baby, which was focused on the baby market, or the pregnancy market, but you've evolved from that. How did you do that? How did you stop thinking only one path and start opening up the pathway?
Well, it goes back to what Dr. Richardson was even saying about, addressing the things that are in front of you at the moment and taking those as and looking at them as opportunities. And so we were building Baby out. The pandemic hit, and people were saying we need this for grandma's hip surgery or so on. So we continued to look at our product and see how we could be expanding into other spaces. And then we had other social service agencies coming to us and saying, hey, if you're connecting families together, can you connect our Ohana together? Which is maybe not, the family the way that we're defining it initially, but it looks different for everybody. And so what we realized is that we didn't just create a product, but we created a foundation for a technology company that could expand into all these different areas. And so, we understand that focus or fail mindset. And so we really are focusing in certain areas currently, but we see opportunity that can, carry us through for many, many years and help many, many people along the way.
So Brian, I just want to chime in and say education in general is a social entrepreneurship endeavor. We're developing the pipeline of talent that's going to be relevant for every existing and yet to be discovered industry. And so a major part of what Invent Penn State does and the network of innovation hubs is to provide an opportunity for that talent development, for serial entrepreneurship to take place. And we have to do it at every level of the education continuum. And that's why the challenging the status quo and developing an entrepreneurial mindset, even if you work within a business or organization, opposed to starting your own, you need that mindset. in order to be a part of building the effective team. And so the network of innovation hubs is doing that. And we've realized that by adding an intentional DEI component to what we would say is a much more integrated network of hubs, provides what each of the panelists talk about in terms of their organizations and who needs to be employed in those organizations. So we are developing the diverse talent, and I think every college or university has the responsibility to do that, but Penn State is doing it at a level that is unmatched by the multitude of institutions that I've been a part of.
So that talent piece that I mentioned earlier, the grow our own, re-attract our own, that's really the focus, obviously, of the knowledge economy, where you're creating not only smart people, but smart people who make other smart people and do really intriguing things.
And the interesting thing with Penn State and in this initiative is that you don't have to be a college student. You don't have to be a part of higher ed to take advantage of the community-facing nature of Penn State. And that's tremendous. So we have programming that really works with pre-college students, creating that mindset. And that's going to pay dividends long-term.
I have a question, Brian, for the panel. Each of you is a disruptor. So you're accustomed to coming into a situation and saying, okay, I'm going to question everything and we're going to innovate here. You're always kind of shaking things up. But last year, we were all shaken up by something that disrupted us. And I'm curious if there was a different process that you went through, or if you had a different approach to responding to being disrupted yourself.
I'll start, I guess. We were just starting to hire in the beginning of the year. And so, like I've mentioned before, we hired 12 people over the last 12 months. And we all work remote. But what I found is that, we were able to find talent, local talent that one in particular works at home with her babies on her lap. And she's an incredible graphic design artist, and she has taken over our social media and has just been such a blessing to our business, and otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity had we been building our company in a way that, you're coming to the office from 9 to 5 and so on. So we really learned that building our company with the capabilities of working remotely and still having an effective work day together has been awesome. And we've found great talent in opening opportunities up to people that maybe wouldn't have had opportunities otherwise.
So a question from the chat: how do you measure innovation's success, or the success of your innovation? How do you do that?
So Brian, if I may, I've been doing this for a while, and I find that innovation, often a silo with its own metrics, with its own people, with its own processes, is generally not quite as effective of when you imbue it directly in the culture. So, one of the things I've been doing for the first couple of months here at FDIC is ensuring that the organizational metrics, how we govern the success of the organization itself, are kind of up to snuff, because that's how I would measure it. And that's how I will measure our success in this. Is FDIC, are they creating more value? Are they running more efficiently? Are they doing more things in the market that lift everyone up? And at some point, I'm going to ask the question, is the average American's experience in the banking sector better because of what we've been doing? That's how I'm framing it for us. And we're doing this a few times. That's the way to do it. I don't like having separate metrics.
So I'd also add that for higher ed, and even how we approach the innovation hubs, the network of innovation hubs, it's the extent to which we grow who we serve, the demographics that we serve. So it's not enough to have education be an elite experience for those who have already have resources, but it has to be inclusive of those who have aspirations and talents and the willingness and ability to learn. We've got to put them in the best situations for that. So we can look at the metrics in terms of how we grow our enrollment and who we serve. We also get to look at metrics around whether students have access to the full range of resources, degree programs, internships, opportunities for launching startups, getting exposed to the opportunities to do that. So we're not lacking in having appropriate metrics. We may fall short at times in succeeding to produce the outcomes, and then we have to evaluate what are our strategies. And we need to then do all the things that you just said, and that is make sure the right people are at the table, that we have leadership that isn't hesitant to have bold and audacious goals to make change happen.
So final question for the panel, and thank you all for your thoughts and your guidance and answers. Let's say I'm a young entrepreneur and I'm participating in today's event, and I'd like to figure out what are the first 2 steps I should take in order to drive innovation within either myself or my organization, or if I'm starting a company, my startup. What are the first couple things that I should be doing or thinking about doing?
Well, I'll jump in and say the single biggest and most important question I tell my students when I get asked this question is, what kind of an impact do you want to have?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. We are at a moment in human history where the technical capabilities at our fingertips in the little pocket computer we all carry around is greater than anything else in human history. And you can be in the middle of a rural environment that, as long as you have a smartphone and a reasonable internet connection, you can do anything you want. And so the question is, what kind of impact do you want to have? What do you want to do in the world? What do you want to change? What are things that drive you and motivate you? If you don't know the answer to that question, I think everything else downstream becomes harder, because at the end of the day, and I'm sure Kara has experienced this, I certainly have, you are going to be on the worst day of your life with your company, and you're going to be yelled at. You're going to have customers, you're going to have employees, you're going to have investors, you're going to have a bad piece of press. All these things are going to happen in the same 15-minute window, and you're going to have to dig very deeply to make it through the rest of that day. And if you do not start from that pace of knowing the impact you want to have and having that personal investment and passion and drive to continue down that when it seems like everything is against you, then you're going to struggle to be successful, and you're going to struggle to have fun while you're doing it. And you're going to struggle to, at the end of the day, when you put your feet up, you climb into bed and you think about that day and you ask yourself, did you have the kind of impact on the world you want to? You won't. And it'll be a tough day. And then the next day will get harder, and the day after that will get harder. So that would be my starting point.
Great insights. Kara, Tina, follow on.
Yeah. To piggyback on that, what I was going to say, you kind of stole my answer just a little bit, which is great. How passionate are you about the problem that you're trying to fix? And again, what kind of impact do you want to make? And there's really hard days. And my commitment to figuring out the solution to the problem that I was, addressing is really what kept me going year after year after. I mean, I've been at this for 5 years, and we're just getting there. So over the 5 years, it's just been that continued commitment, dedication, and obsession with finding a solution to the problem that I was setting out to fix.
Yeah, I would echo the same, but I will add that a little bit of self-promotion here. Programs and initiatives like Invent Penn State, as you are developing your passion and your passions and commitments, you also need a network that will support and propel you forward. Now, you may be very early stage and you're not going to have the capital investments in your idea, but you need to be a part of a network that will support you in developing your idea and your passions and converting them to tangible and commercializable ideas.
Well, I think everything that everyone said can be wrapped up perhaps in this last slide, which is status quo is anathema to entrepreneurism. It's not until you lose sight of your comfort that you can then focus on your vision. So I really want to thank our panelists today, Kara Wasser with Ohana Link Technologies, Sultan Meiji now with the FDIC, and Dr. Richardson, Chancellor at Penn State and Lehigh Valley. I also really want to thank everyone involved with the Penn State Venture and IP Conference, the executive team led by Dr. James Delattre and Kelly Shako, along with the incredible support from my colleagues, Steve Brawley, the CEO, and John Sider of the Ben Franklin Technology Partners, and also the entire Penn State Ventures and IP team led by Jordan Tarr and Ian Shako. So don't miss out because there's more coming up at 1 o'clock. Make sure you come back for IP 101, everything startups need to know about intellectual property protection. So here are the resources that I use to create this presentation. And because there's no way you're going to remember all of these URLs, in the upper right corner, if you go to tinyurl.com/PSUVIP-DSS, that's Penn State University Venture and IP Conference Deconstructing Status Quo Thinking, DSS, you'll have access to all of these resources and frankly, a few more. So again, thank you so much, Nina. Thanks for the opportunity to collaborate with you on this presentation, and back to you.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, panelists. It's so wonderful to have insight into your worlds and understand how you approach innovation and problem solving. And that just went so fast. I feel like I could spend twice as much time listening to you. And I kind of want to go offline and keep talking, but I know we can't do that today. So thank you so much. Maybe we can do it again. Another shout out to our sponsors. We couldn't do this without you. So thank you for supporting the conference. And I'd also like to encourage everyone who's listening to not miss the fireside chat later today with the Merck CEO and Chairman Kenneth Frazier, who'll be speaking with Penn State President Barron. And that's it. So thank you, everybody.